Hi, I'm Rajiv, and today we are learning all about natural dyes here at Old Sturbridge Village. I'm here with Rachel Hollenbeck, who works at the Fenno House, which is a building that is it exactly 300 years old or almost 300 years old?
We think almost 300 years old. We know that the wood, from some dendrochronology, that the wood was cut down in 1724. So we're thinking the house was probably built in 1725. So almost 300 years old.
That's very special. It's this house right here. And this morning when I walked by and saw you setting up in this beautiful little space with the flowers in bloom and the apple tree in bloom, I thought, like, this is just such a picture. There's something about working in a place like this that you really feel like you've left the modern world. It's very, very special to be here. You know all about this process of natural dyeing, which is something that I also did. So I have wanted to share this with our audience for a long time. Let's get right into it. This here is the undyed wool when it's come off the sheep and it's been cleaned and spun, right?
Yes. 200
years ago, all the colors that went into cloth would have been natural dyes. There wasn't chemical dyes back in the 1700s or early 1800s. Chemical dyes were invented after 1850, right?
Yeah, I just say mid-century.
Yeah,
so.
Before that, every single color that went into every piece of clothing came from a natural source. And that, to me, is really fascinating because it means that people had to figure out how to go out there and find the things that would create these colors. So let's talk about the colors that you've laid out here. These are so beautiful. What are they?
So to start with, our local dyes in New England are greens and browns and yellows.
Okay.
So our first dye that we have here today is sage. It makes some beautiful greens. The darker green would be from the first batch. The lighter green would be from the second batch, just like using a tea bag. The first time you use it, darker color, more flavor. The second time, if you try to reuse it, it'll just be a lighter color. The colors look really good together when we have multiple batches. So our first one that we have is sage. Our second one that we have is black walnuts.
And that's a native tree, right? Mm-hmm. There must be people out there who are watching this that say, I know that plant. In the fall, they drop and they stain the sidewalk and they stain my driveway, because I used to hear that all the time. And historically, the husks of the black walnut created such a beautiful color. So that's this right here, right?
Yes, that's this right here. Sometimes it can be a more red brown and sometimes it can be more of a darker brown. Our next color, so what we have here is fustic, which is a tree from Mexico. So you could buy your yellows to get a really nice gold color. You could also pick tansy, goldenrod onion skins and get another shade of yellow that way. So with each of those, you're gonna get a slightly different color of yellow.
My favorite color of all the natural dyes that I ever made was goldenrod. And this was always the color that I was going for. But the beauty of creating these dyes is you never actually know what you're gonna get. You might make one color one year and then you try to make the same shade the next year and it's totally different. So goldenrod would sometimes make this, but sometimes it would be slightly green or sometimes it would be a pale yellow. That's really beautiful.
So these three colors are our local colors. All of the brighter colors are typically in the 1830s, coming from closer to the equator, warmer climate, longer growing season that New England just doesn't have. So we have reds and oranges from madder root.
Yep.
Madder root is coming from France and the Netherlands at the time, but it's originally from the Middle East.
Okay.
So they had figured out how to cultivate it in a slightly colder climate, but it makes some really nice, bright colors. So what I have right here is cochineal beetles. So that is the main thing in 1830s New England dyeing that is not a plant or a tree of some sort. Cochineal beetles actually would eat the fruit of the prickly pear cactus plant. There was a bright pink color and it would stain their insides. So people in Latin America would gather those beetles, dry them, crush them up, and get a beautiful pink powder that was used in a lot of different things.
That's beautiful. And then this last one is logwood, right?
Yes. So logwood's coming from the West Indies, what we call the Caribbean in the modern day. And it can make blues, it can make grays or purples. You also might use indigo, which is coming from India, to also make some blues or turquoise colors. So yeah, people did not lack for bright colors in 1830s New England.
I also love that this is something that people can do at home. Like anyone out there can do the research to find out what is growing locally that creates an actual color-fast dye. And a color-fast dye means that you're going to create a color that will go into the fiber, and it's going to stay there without being washed out or changing drastically over time. Like a lot of people think that berries will create a dye. Like, oh, if you want red, can't you just use raspberries? No, that creates a stain. And a stain will change color and fade and hopefully wash out. But a true dye stuff comes from something that's going to leave the color permanently in the fiber. And there are all kinds of fascinating things growing around here that will create a dye. So this genuinely is something that you can do at home. Rachel, can you walk us through the process of actually going from sage, which we all know, it's sage like the herb, right? Mm-hmm. And you grow it here?
Yes, we grow some in our garden. We do typically dry it before we use it. From there, we actually soak it, then we boil it, very strong rolling boil. The morning we're gonna use it for at least a couple of hours, and then we will strain all of the sage out of the dye water so that that doesn't stick to all the yarn that we're going to dye. So we pour it through a cloth, take out all the little pieces, and then we take our green water, put it back in the kettle, and add a mordant. So our mordant that we use with this is alum, and we add some iron to darken the color a little bit as well. We have it all measured out.
And it's a powder.
Yes.
So this is powdered iron, with alum mixed together.
Yes, and this is about 1 ounce of each of them since we are doing a pound of wool at a time. So I'm just going to get all of that out. And then if you want to stir it. All right, so before the yarn actually gets put into the dye bath, we start by washing it and getting out the extra grease. So you might put a little bit of soap or ammonia in there. That will take out that grease so that the yarn doesn't get streaky with having some oil in it. So we have already started rinsing that soap back out of it, and it's all warmed up, so it will be ready to go into the dye bath after that.
Now I know the answer to this, but for them, why can't you just take wool that's in cold water and put it in the dye bath?
It will shock the fibers, so taking it from really cold water to really hot water or vice versa will make the fibers just stick together and turn them into a felt.
Yeah, so that's how you actually create felt. Hot, cold, agitate, agitate, agitate. So sometimes people wonder like, wait a minute, you're dyeing wool but you're boiling it? I thought you can't boil wool. Isn't that gonna ruin the wool? No, it's fine to have it at one temperature and to gradually take it up and to gradually allow it to come back down to room temperature. What you don't do is take it from hot and put it directly into cold or vice versa.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna follow you, and if you need my help, tell me what to do.
All right. And then from here, you can just gently put it in. It will immediately start to take up the color. So we'll drop that. You can put yours in.
Stick?
Yes, and then we can just take that and gently push it down under.
And you keep saying gently because it's agitating the wool at this stage that you don't want to do because it'll felt it.
Yes, perfect. And then we will leave it in there an hour to an hour and a half, but every 10 to 15 minutes we'll take it out and turn the skein inside out so that the outside isn't darker than the inside. So we will get everything equally covered with this beautiful green.
These aren't done yet, right?
Exactly. So now we are going to rinse that extra dye out so that if we knit a scarf and it rains, there won't still be extra dye in there that will then absorb into a beautiful white shirt.
Yeah, okay.
So from there, we're actually going to take some of our hot water that we always have ready.
Yep.
We'll put it in one of our tin kettles and add a little bit of soap to it. and rinse that extra dye back out. And then we'll slowly rinse the soap out by taking another kettle and having colder and colder and colder water until it's actually very, very cold well water.
So historically they would have used a soft soap that was homemade, but today, like if someone was doing this at home, what would be a soap that would be appropriate for rinsing out the dye?
A dish soap that cuts grease
Okay.
would help remove that extra dye from the yarn. All right, so then we'll leave it in there for a few minutes and we'll get the next slightly cooler water ready.
Okay.
And keep rinsing it and keep cooling the water until the water runs clear when we pick it up. So sometimes it's pretty quick and it only takes a couple of rinses. Sage usually takes a few more than that. It likes to hold that colored water a little bit longer.
Okay. Is this where you dry everything?
We usually dry it outside as long as we're here, and then we take it inside for the night just in case it rains.
Okay.
And then we bring it back out the next day and turn it inside out so
Right.
that all of it gets dry. Don't want pockets of, it holds the water really well. Wool is great at that, so.
How to dye wool the natural way with local plant material here at Old Sturbridge Village with Rachel. Rachel, thank you so much for having us here today. This has been so wonderful.
Well, thank you for coming.